Hello and welcome to another episode of the RevRx podcast, where we discuss how to thrive in faith, family, and health. My name is Chad Potts, and I'm your host. I'm excited to bring you today's episode where I sit down with Taylor Johnson. Taylor's a new Christian author, and she's actually releasing her book now. So I wanted to be able to release this episode, drop this episode during her book release so that you guys can be introduced to her, hear her story, which is phenomenal, hear the wisdom and grace with which she has written this book, and be able to encourage you guys to go out and buy it because it's gonna really help you on your journey with learning what it looks like to walk with Christ. Her book is called Aligned and Alive, and it really talks about just that, how to align your life with Christ in order to find fulfillment and really live fully alive for Him. And so you're going to love what she talks about, where we go in this conversation. Had an awesome time sitting down with her, and you guys check out her new book. Without further ado, I introduce to you my new friend, Taylor Johnson. Thank you, Taylor, for joining us today on the RevRx podcast. What a privilege it is to have you here on the show.
Hey, Chad. Thanks so much for having me. It is just as much an honor to be here and share with your listeners and your guests what the Lord puts on our hearts. So I'm ready.
Yeah. Awesome. Me too. I'm excited about this. And when I first found out about your book that you're releasing or that you have released, I was really drawn to it. And, there's a lot about it that I want to unpack today. But before we get into that, I'd love to just hear a little bit about you. Can you tell us who you are? Help us get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
And, really your experience and your relationship with the Lord.
Certainly. So, again, my name's Taylor, and I live in Houston, Texas. I'm married, have a almost 9-month-old daughter. And my journey really starts, I was raised in the church. I grew up to know the Lord. I was baptized at 12, and I had a heart for the Lord. At the same time, I also didn't know how to navigate life with the Lord. And, I had a broken home, parents divorced and separated, and just, we didn't have the family unit and support that I probably really needed, and didn't really have the community that I really needed to nurture my relationship with the Lord. And so I also had an issue with people pleasing and,
Me too.
just really wanting to be liked and to fit in. And I was going to school and making friends. A lot of people liked me, and I wanted to continue that. I wanted to continue to be liked by them. So that led to just getting down the wrong road, the wrong path. And ultimately, it just led to getting really far from the Lord and down this terrible path of sin and darkness and pain and emptiness and brokenness. And to the point where I'm like, okay, who am I? Because I've been trying to fit in with so many different people, trying to be liked by everyone to where, like, I don't even know who I am. Like, what do I value? What do I care about? What are my morals? What is my purpose? And I tried so hard to conform. And we see in Romans 12:2 that he tells us, do not be conformed by the ways of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that we will know God's perfect, pleasing will. And that is like my life verse, because it's something that I have to do daily, transform my mind, renew my mind, stay on the narrow path and the path that's going to lead to life. Because the other way, when we go down the stream of life and we allow society and cultural norms and other people to dictate what our life should look like, we end up to all these dead ends.
Yeah.
We end up lost. And I'm like, who am I? So I get to that point. Who am I? Well, I get invited to join this business venture. And I will mention that on paper, I'm, starting college. I actually had done college a year early in high school. So on paper, I looked like I had it together, doing college early. I worked like 5 different part-time jobs, got good grades, and seemed, successful. Well, then I start this new business venture, and I end up becoming pretty successful in that, as far as really ambitious and driven and hungry to learn and to grow. And so again, still on paper, just looking like, okay, she's got it together. Well, this business venture really served me in a way because it surrounded me with mentors and women who could pour into my life that had godly morals and values. And I actually had gotten this invitation. So right around that time when, I was introduced to this business venture and starting to grow my business, I was invited to a women's night at a church. And I hadn't been in a church in years. And she's like, I want you to meet this girl. She's going to be perfect for your business venture. Like, you have to come to this night and meet her. I'm like, I'm there. You said she's perfect for what I got going on. Like, I will go meet her.
Yep.
And God was up there laughing because he's like, this is a divine appointment for you, Taylor, not for this business, for you. And so I walk in and I'm hearing this sermon, we go through the worship and I'm already just feeling life. And I'd been walking so numb for so long. And I'm like, I feel the energy of the Lord. And she looks at me in her message right into my eyes. And you're Pastor Chad, so I know you know this feeling where you're speaking a word and it's almost like the Lord hones you in on someone. And she says, there's royalty in your veins because you are a child of God. Remember who you are. And it's like electricity came from my head to my toes. Remember who you are. And that just repeated, remember who you are. And God drew my heart back to him.
Yeah.
He said, you're mine.
That'll preach.
Yes. So that was that moment for me. It was just like, boom, okay, that's who I am. Now let me walk this out. Now let me renew my mind and transform and change and grow in that long journey after that, right? And continues to be. But that was when my heart drew back to him. And I'm like, I want to do life with God now.
Yeah.
I want to forgive. I want to let go of bitterness. I want healing. I want to feel life and not numbness, not death, not destruction. So that's kind of just the start of that.
Yeah. I love that on so many levels. Maybe we can unpack it just a little bit. But number one, you were raised in a church. I was too. I was saved when I was 9. Couldn't wait to get baptized. Matter of fact, my pastor was out of town the week after I got baptized, and he said, "Can I baptize you when I get back?" And I said, "No." So my associate pastor baptized me at the time. I just couldn't wait.
Aww.
And, you go through and you try your best to live for the Lord, but then you kind of get sucked into the culture, don't you? I relate so much to that part of your story where you talked about how everyone kind of had an idea of who they wanted you to be.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where you said, well, who am I really? It's kind of a chameleon of sorts. When I was growing up, I was trying to be a people pleaser. I would try to please my teachers. I would try to please my friends. I would try to fit in. And you're right. When we start getting that feeling and that satisfaction of, okay, people like me, we want to keep that going, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do, whatever that takes. And I look back and I'm, now hindsight's 2020, right? Now I look back and I'm like, what an idiot. Because I look back at the different crowds of people that I tried to fit in. And really what I was looking for was that ultimate landing place of, I love you for who you are.
Mm.
Not that I love you for what you can do for me, or I love you because of your performance, or I love you because of any benefit. I love you because of who you are. And that's the fulfillment that we find in Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
kind of what you came back to years later.
Yeah.
Remember who you are.
Yep.
And so I just want to encourage anybody out there just listening to this, hey, if that resonates with you, you're never going to be satisfied outside of a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Mm.
That's not going to happen. We can try so hard, can't we? But outside of Jesus, we're not going to find that fulfillment.
Right.
And I found that myself too. This isn't about me, but just to say I resonate with that. Another thing I really like about your story is that it wasn't just this neat cut, step 1, step 2, the end, you live happily ever after. A lot of times I think, we really have to make our faith our own, don't we? And you experience that as kind of a young adult. I serve as a young adult pastor right now. And so it's that 18 to 30-year-old group,
Mm.
and that was a period in my life where I had to say, all right, well, I believe what I believe because I believe it, instead of I believe what I believe because it's how I was raised. If that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yep.
And I love hearing that coming back to Jesus story as a young adult, because that's really when we begin wrestling with things. We begin
Mm.
doing our own things. That your story is beautiful, but your story is you know it's not one in a million. There are so many people that are struggling with the same thing.
Yep.
They're going their own way. They're doing their own thing. They think they have their path lined out, but God's drawing you back home.
Mm.
And I love that you found that later down the road, and it wasn't just a 1-2 neat, clear-cut path. But the point I'm trying to make is we may wonder, and we may try to find our own place in this world, but we serve a God who never leaves us alone.
Mm-hmm.
And He pursued you on your journey, and He drew you back home. So,
Amen.
love it.
And it was a predestined plan
Yeah,
of that piece that he already knew, and he already had a plan of how he would rescue me, how he would save me. And it also serves as encouragement for parents out there that may be, you raised your child in the Lord. You tried your best of what you knew how to, what Proverbs tells us, to raise them as they should go and they will not depart. And there may be a season where they're in rebellion. There may be a season where they're lost or confused. And so you keep praying, because my mom, my family kept praying for me. And it was their prayers that helped bring me back to the Lord. It was their prayers that probably tears on my mom's pillow at night that I had no concerns about, right? I'm just out living my life. And she's probably pleading behind closed doors for me to be drawn to the Lord. And the Lord hears those prayers and he answers them. And your child will be reconciled with the Lord. So that just serves as some encouragement, because my mom is now bearing that fruit today to see both of her children just hungry for God and, living in the true fulfillment of Christ.
yeah. Laying that foundation is so important. It gives you something. You do have to make it your own, but it gives you something to really draw from. And God is faithful, and I love hearing that in your story. So that leads us a little bit into what's going on now. So tell us a little bit about your book. Tell us a little bit about, you've got a course that kind of goes along with it. You're just really trying to pour out into other women mostly, and really show them what does it look like to align your life with God. So tell us kind of what started your book journey, and then, however much you want to share with us about that.
Certainly. So funny story is, I had this inkling to write in the height of my success in business, and I figured it out. I need to write a book. And it's like, just when you think you know something, God kind of it's when he tells you, probably don't know it.
Kind of humbled you, don't he?
So I start writing, get 2 pages in, and dead end. I'm like, all right, this was blown. I don't have the secret to success. So it wasn't long after that my business started to really decline and just wasn't producing, the productivity that we needed to keep up. Really my leadership platform was just crumbling. And again, I'm realizing oh wait, self-made throne here. God will not let, especially if you're a child of his and he loves you and he has a plan to prosper you in his way, he's not going to let you build up in these other areas.
Right.
At some point, it's going to come crumbling down.
That's an important distinction.
Yes. So he knew what was in my heart. He knew the pride that was growing in my heart. He knew the place that I was operating in, even though I didn't fully know it, because in a lot of ways I thought I was serving and leading well, and I was being trained by, godly women in a sense. And so I thought I was doing it the right way, but he knew my heart. So this is a great prompting question for you to ask the Lord, Lord, what's in my heart? What is sitting on the throne of my heart? What's deep seated in my heart? And reveal to me my intentions in everything that I do. What are my motives? And
be ready for an answer.
Be ready for an answer, because he'll speak. So this height of the success comes crashing down, and I'm pulled away from all of this limelight. of life in my business. And so then he's like, I'm like, all right, God, well, now what? Because in my mind, I'm thinking like, I'm just going to rebuild this business, like, all right, I'm down at the bottom. Let me build back up and do it stronger and more efficiently, more effectively this time. And he just takes me to this still quiet place and he says, daughter, write. I'm like, right. Okay. Like, so I start journaling with him and we're just in a lot of quiet time and a lot of just stagnancy in my life around me, not my spiritual life, but like what's going on around me, just stagnancy, quiet, still, like nothing's moving or shaking. So, and I did have another job too at the time that I still serve in that area. But I just remember we start journaling and I start hearing his voice clear, very clear. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he starts telling me ways in which I need to start aligning to him more. You need to start taking better care of your body. You need to start eating better. Look at your relationship with food. Because I will share that prior to this, I was a sugar fiend. Bag of Sour Patch candy, any sour candy, like a day, I would eat it. Loved wine, loved to have wine with dinner. And at this time, too, I still was pretty lukewarm in my faith, And I had been feeling this draw, like I need to get baptized again because I was baptized at 12. But since that encounter that I had just shared, like I went a few years and just wasn't really growing beyond a certain point in my walk. It's like I get an itch to like go further and then I'm just kind of brought back and I'm in this in between place and it's really uncomfortable. Like it sucks being in that place because you're not fulfilled in the world and you're not fulfilled in God. So anyways, he starts speaking and he's like, we're getting in alignment. So that's the word that he kept giving me. You're getting in alignment. So I start living it. I start treating my body better, start feeding my body better, start paying attention to the words that are deep seated in my heart. I said, God, help me stop cussing. Take it from me. I'm done. Because there had been times I'd thought about it. Like, I really wish I could stop cussing. Like, it's not good. And it was just so natural at the time. Like, it just came out. And there was one day that I'm just like, cut it off. I'm done. And from that moment on, like that desire had completely gone away. It was like overnight. It was so crazy. It was supernatural. But he was just starting to refine me in so many ways in this quiet place. And I remember sitting and just typing out all the chapters one day with him, like just boom, boom, boom. And then he starts just speaking and pouring out. And I had thought like, okay, I need to Google how to write a book. I need to find out how we do this. How do I organize all this? And I remember talking to a friend who's actually my podcast co-host now. And I'm like, we just reconnected at the time. And I'm like, I need to know you're an author. So I have my notebook out. I'm like, all right, tell me the steps. How do I write a book? She's like, you let God speak.
Wow.
Let God speak. She's like, don't get in the way. I'm like, all right. So from that moment on, it just started to flow. So since then, he then led me to continue my personal refinement and alignment journey because it never stops. We're always having to get back into alignment with God. And, when we deviate from his path, it's like, oh, nope. But the more we practice it, the better we get at it, the faster we get at it of recognizing our discernment, our wisdom sharpens. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want to get far from the Lord. Right. So we get back in alignment. And so really this book just invites readers on this journey to, number one, hear a little bit about my story of surrender and alignment and just gain some practical wisdom around the world versus God's ways, really. Ultimately is kind of what goes back and forth. I talk a lot about the ways of this world, society, cultural norms, the pride that we just fall into all the time, the sources that we seek for fulfillment and that we fixate on. We fixate on materialism. We fixate on comparison, and we try to fill ourselves with things that always end up leaving us empty and needing more.
Yeah, 100%.
And needing more and needing more. And it never suffices. Never. And so I share that about my journey a lot of different stories. I talk about just the emotional trap that we fall in, where we do fall into a victimhood state of mind at times. And we don't want to get well sometimes, if we're being honest. We like to sit in our pity. We like to sit and sulk about how the world is against us. And God's like, my hand has been out this whole time, waiting for you to grab it. I'm waiting for you to lay your burdens at my feet. I'm waiting for you to finally see that this no longer serves you and to just lay it down and trust me.
Yeah. That's
So,
beautiful.
in a nutshell.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the thing you said about it being an everyday process.
Mm-hmm.
I can't emphasize that enough. It can be said the same thing about getting in alignment with God. I kind of think of it as like surrender, surrendering my will to His, and that's not a once and for all thing. We don't go to the altar and surrender it all, and then the next day pick it all back up again. There's a tendency to do that, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's why we have to go every day. That's why it's an everyday process. And so realizing that alignment with God is what's going to make us really alive. And I like the title of your book. The men's coaching that I do is called Man Alive, men's coaching. And so I'm really picking up what you're putting down here.
Sweet.
Because we're really only truly alive, there's so many people that are living and breathing, but not really alive. We're only really truly alive when we're in alignment with God's will for our life. And
Amen.
And that's what you described for us beautifully through that process. I want to go back a little bit to the part where you had mentioned that you asked for the directions for how to write a book. And you sound a lot like me. I'm a planner. Like, just give me the steps. I'll write it down. I'll go through the steps. Yeah, I'm pretty efficient, pretty good at following directions, and I can make that happen. And what your friend told you was, let God speak. And that's powerful because, when you, and then when you did, like you mentioned, it just flowed. That's happened so many times in my life, not writing books, but writing like sermons.
Yes.
I'll be stuck and I'll be studying for hours. I'm like, God, what is it you want to say? And then eventually I'll kind of get this sense of, all right, quit forcing it.
Yep.
And then God will give me everything I need in an hour.
Yeah.
And I've been studying for 6 days about it. That's just how God works, isn't it? When we try to make it ours, and when we try to do it in our strength, it's nothing compared to when we surrender and let Him have control.
Right.
What's been your experience with that through this book and then through kind of your journey of releasing this and launching this? Because if you're anything like me, there's probably still this tendency to kind of grab control of it. Like, okay, This is my book. Hey, this is my, walk us through what that's looked like for you.
So I love this question because it's pretty real, raw, authentic in the sense of it's been a journey over the past 2 years because I started writing this about 2.5 years ago. And I was very like, oh, it's done. Like within, the year, I was like, it's done. I got in contact with a publisher. They read it. They loved it. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to proofread their thing and it's going to be great. And I start proofreading and it's just like, he just starts changing things. And it's just become this process over 2 years of editing and changing. And what I realize now looking back is there were stories that needed to be in that book that hadn't yet happened.
That's cool.
So in my logical brain of just ready for this thing to be out, I'm like, my gosh, like the timeline, like, come on, like more delays, like this is taking time and proofreading and re-editing and this and that. I'm like, I'm just so ready for it to be out. And then I would just sit with it. And then he'd just pour out another story and pour out more revelation. I'm like, okay, makes sense. Makes sense. And then even with the launch, you look online and you hear stories about how you need to launch a book. And it's like, oh, do all these steps for the most effective way to launch a book. And, I even printed out this whole book of how I should do it. And I'm like, God, I'm just putting this in your hands. I'm just going to see if I can hop on some podcasts and share your words, share your truth, promote it a bit and put it on social media and just trust you. You're going to orchestrate it. You know the hearts that need to receive this content. And I'm not going to try to force it and try to make it mine because it's not mine. you know who needs this. And so I give this to you. So that, if I'm being real, that was actually a prayer from last night, because I was thinking about like, oh my gosh, okay, now what? What do I need to do to post and like grow the awareness? How do I get more people to buy it? You know, how do I market this? That's really what's just been pondering my mind. And I'm like, I'm just going to trust. And I actually had a women's retreat over the weekend, and I had prepared a whole thing of notes, right? And for this one lesson, and I went to bed, and I had prepared it like 2 weeks prior. So I went to bed before the next day of the retreat. And I wake up at 3 a.m. and the Lord just starts pressing a whole new message on me.
You gotta love that.
Completely new. I'm sure you've experienced that.
Those are some of the most stressful moments and some of the most rewarding moments when you
Yes.
get
I
into
was
that.
like, okay, well, this is new. So up for 3 hours, just like digesting and reading the word and just, okay, God, I got it. And so I guess that is surrender. You know, it's like, it's his will and his way. And we try to get in the way sometimes, and we don't get the best reward at the end when we do. And we deal with that stress and I guess anxiety that comes with control.
And
And
that's
it's
what it
so
comes
much
down to.
easier to let go and just let him do it.
Yeah. It comes down to control. We like to have control. And control is really an illusion anyway. If we
Because we
think about
don't
it,
have control.
we're not really in control. We like to think we are. A wise person once told me, the Lord will be your best marketer.
Mm.
And, you know, I've been through something similar too, with the podcast, with the coaching business, trying to, all right, you know, you can look and you can find a million different opinions about the best way to do X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
What I've found in the last several months is that that's not necessarily how things work in the kingdom of God. And you're right in the midst of that too. And so I would encourage you during this journey, let God do his thing. I'm excited about the content you're putting out. Your story needs to be heard. Your story is a wonderful story of God pursuing you and of God directing your life and getting a hold of you, getting your attention and saying, all right, I have a plan for you.
Mm.
You know, you have a purpose, and it's about getting behind that purpose. And so really, you know, kudos to you for being obedient, for letting him lead along the way, and for being transparent enough to write your story.
Mm.
Being transparent enough to be able to put that out there for other people to see and to learn and to grow from. I'm convinced the longer I do this that whatever we are delivered from, we're supposed to then help other people be delivered from that same thing. And
Yes.
a lot of your work is doing just that.
Thank you.
I'd like to kind of go through a couple of the reasons that I see and that you see and maybe you've experienced that people don't get aligned with God.
Mm.
What are some of those barriers? One of the things that I hear most commonly and that I've experienced in my life is it just seems like life's so busy. You know, and you've been through some transitions recently in life, you know, between marriage and having children. Those are some of the most sanctifying relationships we
Mm-hmm.
can be in. You know, you want to see how selfish you are, have a kid, you know, and
And get
then
married.
everything's revolved around them. But you know, a lot of times people say, "I just don't have time." You know, I want to. They have the best of intentions, but there just seems like there's so much to do. What would be your advice to someone in that situation?
I would say, because in the times that I've felt that, just because it's an urgent feeling doesn't necessarily mean that it's a priority. And I think that we confuse those two a lot, like urgency and priority. Because it's like, okay, things just can come on you like, okay, for instance, your phone, it starts lighting up notifications, kind of signifying urgency of message or email or this.
You know,
Right. Check it now, you know? Or you walk in the kitchen and you see dishes stacked up or the laundry pile overflowing. And that's a signal of urgency. Like, yeah, I need to take care of this. Like, oh, this is in front of me. It's tangible. I see it. I got to take care of these things. You see your schedule and it's full written of all these, you know, things that you have to do, taking the kids here, doing this, doing that. And I think the best piece of advice that can really help all of us is let's sit with the Lord with these things and maybe write them all down and really ask Him, is this as big of a priority as I'm making it? To where it actually precedes you and it precedes my time with you each day. And, we pick up our phones so easily whenever we do have a few minutes of quiet instead of just getting in the Word. And something that I've started doing is just leaving my Bible open out in the living room where I sit a lot and just leave it there on the couch so that when I do go to sit and take a minute, it's like I'm looking at the Word. And it's like, okay, no, get in the Word, not in your phone scrolling,
It's a
because
reminder.
we do have distractions around us. And I think sometimes we are the culprit of our own busyness and stress because we put it on ourselves and our schedule. I just want to say that not every opportunity is an aligned opportunity.
That's good.
So take it to the Lord. And I'm learning this about just stewardship in general with my time, with my talent, with my treasure. I'm taking it to the Lord and saying, Lord, help me steward well. Help me steward well because I don't want to steward my time in the wrong way.
Right.
I'm over here, I'm wasting precious moments and minutes that you've gifted me, that's a gift to me to fulfill your will and to essentially like bring the kingdom of heaven here on earth.
Right.
To share your good word.
Yeah, I love that. Every opportunity is not an aligned opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That'll preach too. And yeah, I want to kind of go back to that too, bringing it full circle, because those are also ways that we begin to try to continue that people pleasing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, somebody's texting me. I feel like I've got to write them back or they're going to be upset with me.
Mm-hmm.
I've got this to-do list and that, really and truly being able to pray through that to-do list. And I've done this on more than one occasion, writing it down and just going line by line. God, how important is this to you?
Yep.
All right. See, feel what it is that he's saying. All right, Lord, next. How important is this to you? And by the time you work through that, I wonder how many times we give our to-do list as an excuse to God instead of giving our to-do list to God. Does that make sense?
Mic drop.
And so, yeah, I love that. And then, it becomes less about time and more about priorities, doesn't it?
Yes.
We all have the same amount of time a day. How do we use it? What are we putting into it?
I think too, we underestimate, and again, this is our human logic and just trying to box God in to think that I have to have this amount of time with Him to get something or to receive or to nurture our relationship. And you'd be amazed what God can do in 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
When your heart's in the right place and you're ready. And this also doesn't have to be something that's just like, okay, just first 30 minutes of my day and that's it. What I've learned with family life and a baby and, just everything that my schedule is filled with work and such, that it's so much easier to weave him throughout my entire day and throughout my entire life. And that's really what alignment is. You are surrendering every piece of your lifestyle to him. Faith is not separate. It's not just church on Sunday. Like, faith is how I operate. That is the foundation of how I operate through every area of my life, through being a wife, through being a mom, through my household, my work, my relationships with other people. And that's actually kind of dives into what the course is about, is it takes you through these 7 pillars of your lifestyle. And it's like, hey, this is how we do this with God. This is how you can invite him into this space with you.
That's really cool. I knew I liked you. I have 7 pillars too. But yeah, man, how good is that? That's a good word. Faith is not something separate.
Mm-hmm.
We like to silo that, don't we? I'm going to go to church on Sundays. I'm going to do what I want to the rest of the week. No, alignment is about bringing your relationship with God into every aspect of your life. And there comes that word again. We've danced around it, and I want to kind of close with this: relationship. If there's someone out there, for a lot of my life, following Jesus was going to church. That was it. That's all I did. I didn't read my Bible. The only time I read my Bible was whatever the preacher was preaching on Sunday. That was my Bible reading. I would close it and I'd open it again next. For me, there was no relationship until I was in my mid-20s. and God really got a hold of my life. Sounds very similar to your story. If there's someone out there that's struggling with the fact that, okay, they're trying to follow the Lord, but they've never really tapped into that relationship, what advice would you have for that person listening to this show today, besides read your book?
Yeah, read the book.
Yeah.
You'll know what that's like. So yeah, if you're on the cusp of just like really, gosh, yeah, you're tiptoeing, you're there, you're in that lukewarm place. And I know that feeling. And I know that you have so much that's pulling you towards the other side, that's keeping you bound to where you can't fully embrace the life with God. There's a lot of fear there, I'm sure you feel, of uncertainty. You don't know what it really looks like to let go of what you've always known. You don't know what people are going to think of you. I'm sure that that's crossed your mind. Well, what will happen if I do fully devote? What will these people that I do life with think about?
Mm.
Like, what is this going to do to my future? You know, and there's so much uncertainty. And I think that's why so many people stay in this lukewarm place, because we don't know how to let go and embrace new. We don't know how to. He tells us in his word that when you become a follower of mine, the old has gone and the new has come. That's a promise. That's a statement. That's a declaration. The new has come. Why aren't we embracing it? Why aren't we stepping into that new? He's like, it was there all along, and you haven't stepped into it because you won't let go of the old.
Yeah.
So, because that's the first word. It says the old has gone, has to go before the new has come. So we have to let go and devote. And so that's my encouragement for you is trust. Trust. Because that's the big piece. That's the biggest piece. That was the biggest piece for me, is like, God, can I trust you with this?
And your story tells that out. We serve a God who we can trust with our future.
Mm-hmm.
Anything he has planned for us is better than what we could put together ourselves. And when we reach that place of trust, it's not as hard to step into the new and to leave behind the old. And so, beautifully said. Thank you for that. I've learned a lot from talking to you. You're doing a great work, in this world. Your voice is one that needs to be heard. And so I'm glad we've met. I'm glad we're able to put this out there. I'd love to let's do this again sometime too.
Yeah, for sure.
But one of the things that I really want to just reiterate here is bringing faith into every aspect of your life. You said something earlier. We talked a little bit beforehand about holistic health. What does it look like to bring my faith and my relationship to God into my nutrition?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to bring my relationship with God into how I take care of my body? What does it mean to bring my relationship with God into the way that I treat other people? And that's really the challenge here, isn't it? Is aligning ourselves with God to the point to where in every aspect of my life, he comes out and that he is glorified. And Taylor, you're doing a great job of being able to word that for people and to be able to help them through that process. Thank you so much. Best of luck with the release of the book. You guys go check her out. Taylor, can you give us your website and really how my listeners can go about finding you and your book and your resources?
For sure. Yeah. So faithfulawakening.com is where you can find everything.
Okay.
Pretty simple. All social media platforms are linked at the bottom, and you can see the tabs, the course, you can read about it. That's going to be launching soon. You can see the book and order that. And you can learn about me. You can get a free resource on there. It's actually a free mini alignment guide. So it's about like 11 pages long, and it kind of introduces you to the concept of alignment and, a God-centered purpose, and takes you through those pillars to just start kind of journaling and start that process of alignment. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And thanks so much, Chad, for having me, and, all the glory to God. So it's been amazing on this journey with him.
Amen. And I'll link all that in the show notes as well. But thank you, Taylor. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the RevRx podcast. We hope you enjoyed what you heard today. And if so, we'd love it if you would hit that subscribe button so that you'll never miss a new episode from us. Also, feel free to leave us reviews and comments, as we'd love to hear from you. Be blessed and be the very best you.